Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the July 1st, 2019 Informal County Commission meeting. We have one person that's asked to address the commission. I would ask Mr. Curry, when he comes forward, to come to the microphone over here and give us your name and your address. And if you would, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Mr. Stephen Curry.
Good evening. I live at 3350 John Taylor Road out in Woodlawn. County Commissioners, Mayor. When Jim Durrett ran for mayor in 2014, he castigated the then mayor as a big spender. Since that time, Durrett has been pushing for the county to spend at least $105 million on an event center. This is a want and not a need. It is non-essential. Now he wants to keep the tax rate at $3.07 per hundred after the county reappraisal. The assessor has set the revenue neutral tax rate at $2.57 per 100. If the county commission votes in the 307 rate, this would be at least a 19% increase in taxes. I estimate that would cost taxpayers about $20 million. So now we have a mayor who not only has proposed almost $100 million more in spending than the previous mayor, he now wants to implement the largest tax increase in 23 years. This is tax and spend on steroids. It gets worse. The mayor wants to use, at minimum, $2.2 million of pilot money from the companies with IDB contracts to pay for the event center. This money is supposed to be spent on schools and debt reduction. That means local taxpayers will need to make up that money with higher taxes. And we have yet to hear one figure of how much the annual operating expenses and maintenance expenses of this event center will cost the taxpayers, and we have not heard how much revenue it will generate. The mayor has been quoted as saying he wants to use some of this huge tax increase to pay down debt. If you want to pay down debt, then don't add $105 million in general obligation bonds for a non-essential event center. The county already has long-term debts in the neighborhood of $300 million. We don't need more non-essential spending adding to that total. I am urging the county commission to display the physically conservative behavior we need in this county to prevent our taxes from spiraling out of control, and vote to keep the property tax rate at the revenue neutral amount of $2.57 per hundred on appraised value. We need to rein in this tax and spend way of thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. It's Durrett, by the way. Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will, if I can get my agenda pulled back up, we'll now call our meeting to order. We don't have any presentations. We have two zoning cases before us tonight. Mr. Tyndall, our first case is CZ7 2019, application of David B. Smith from M2 to C2. Mr. Tyndall, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, County Commission. As the Mayor said, we have two cases before you tonight. The first case is CZ7 2019. The request of David Smith. Agent is Akshar Patel. This is 2.19 acres at the intersection of Dunlop Lane and Rollo Lane. It's currently general industrial, being requested to go to general commercial. It is not an extension of the zoning classification. Property fronts both Dunlop Lane and Rollo Lane intersection. It is within the planned growth area 4. To give you a little background, there is some previous zoning history on this case. Back in 1995, it was agriculture, and the entire tract behind it, and this gives you a better idea, was requested for M2. Both staff, the RPC, and the County Commission approved it back in 1995. There was only one department comment of note. That's from the city sewer. There's no gravity sewer available in this area, but it is nearby. They can request extension. The impact of this proposed development would be a reduction in intensity of uses from the M2 to the C2. However, it may be an increase in light traffic likely during operating hours. Staff recommends approval based on the fact that the proposed zoning request is consistent with the adopted land use plan. There's adequate infrastructure serving the site or could serve the site, and no adverse environmental issues were identified. And commercial nodes at intersection in close proximity to residential units provides access to goods and services for the residents without the need to travel longer distances. Take you on a quick tour of that. Here's Rollo Lane, looking right up at the site. There would be some sort of intersection improvement between these two poles probably where the site accesses it. We don't have a site plan on it at the time, obviously. Here's the site. A little further out, you can see where that land is graded. That is R4 apartment complex. That is across the street from Hickory Wild subdivision, currently being constructed. Another angle. This is from Dunlop Lane. Your back here is at the church, right around the corner, looking towards the site. You can see the two telephone poles in the middle of the picture there where that previous picture was taken. Here you are coming up Dunlop Lane. The site is approximately 200 feet up on the right there. And here's from the site at your back, looking down Rollo Lane. Again, staff recommend approval, and the Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Any questions of Mr. Tyndall? Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have any idea what the intended use for the property is?
They did not list that during the application, but I know the applicant is here and could answer that question.
Any other questions of Mr. Tyndall? All right, Jeff, you want to go ahead and, somebody else? Commissioner Bryan, I'm sorry.
Is this kind of spot zoning for this particular parcel? How many acres is in that whole parcel?
Sure. The area hatched out there is 2.19. The larger tract, I'd have to guess, is about 40. But we wouldn't consider it spot zoning because A, it's at the intersection there, and B, you can see right over on John Duke Tyler, that light blue, that's the same zone out there. So the proximity to similar zones and being at the intersection, we wouldn't consider it spot zoning.
And the remainder will continue to be M2?
At this time, yes. They haven't requested the rest to be rezoned yet.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leverett?
Yes, Mayor, I was just going to ask whenever Mr. Tyndall was done, can we hear from the owner of the property, please? Is that okay?
I didn't hear you.
Can we hear from the owner of the property since he's
Yeah,
here?
we're going to have a public hearing.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
ma'am. Commissioner Beal?
I was going to ask the same question, if we could ask the owner what the intended use is going to be. Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Tyndall? Mr. Tyndall, do you want to go ahead and do CZ8 2019, and then we'll call for
Sure.
public hearing on both of them
We
while you're
can
at the
do that.
podium? So our next application is CZ8 2019, application of Bill Mace from R1 to C5.
Yeah, the applicant is Bill Mace and the agent is Wayne Wilkinson. This is 1.94 acres, just under 2 acres on Guthrie Highway at the intersection of Hampton Station Road. Current zoning is R1, proposed to be C5. It is not an extension of the zoning classification. Property is located at the southwest corner of Guthrie Highway, US 79 and Hampton Station Road. Due to the location, it would be better suited for commercial uses. That's the applicant's statement. There's 2 previous zoning cases on this. Back in 1990, it was agriculture requested to go to C5. Both staff, Regional Planning Commission, and the County Commission approved it. A year later, in 1991, it was C5. It was requested to go to R1, likely with those other R1 lots, the 6 of them to the south there. Staff and Regional Planning Commission recommended disapproval. The County Commission overturned that with an approval. So 1991 was the last time this property was addressed. There's no sewer available on this property, but is available nearby. It's a city service area. It's prone to frequent flooding, and will be addressed. We had a site plan just next door to this case. I don't know, you can't see my cursor here. The property immediately to the west there is a block company. They make cinder blocks and other decorative blocks, and they were expanding their building, and some of the residents came out with concerns about flooding. We actually feel that redevelopment of this site specifically will actually help the flooding in the area because it may help to reestablish the ditches between the properties and on the street line. So sometimes development does work out to your favor, especially when it comes to flooding. Here's a picture of the property. completely wooded right now. That home right there is on the next parcel over, so it's a little narrower, and then the property to the right bows out a little more. There's the block company just up the hill from this subject property. This is looking back up toward Hampton Station Road from a storage site that's on the property just south of Hampton Station Road. And you can see the water comes in this general direction, and there is a pipe there, but on the other side, the ditches just aren't established well. Here's the home that's directly behind this C5 zoning request, and here's the view from Hampton Station Road towards Guthrie Highway, right where that AT&T or cable truck is the subject property. Staff recommended approval based on the fact that it's consistent with the adopted land use plan. The property is located at an intersection of a heavily traveled arterial highway and a county road, which is ideal for C5 uses. Surrounding area has been in transition for several years with an increase in commercial, warehousing, and industrial development, and the existing drainage concerns will be addressed at the site plan development phase. Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Any questions of Mr. Tindall on CZ 8, 2019? Commissioner Johnson?
So, as with the previous, do you have any idea what the land use is intended?
Speaking to the applicant earlier tonight, he did not indicate any existing plans, but he's also here to testify.
And secondly, I understand that you said that at the site planning level it would, but I mean, does anyone have any idea where the water is going to go?
Oh, yes, as I mentioned, so there's a block company, and I think over the years as the block company has commenced operations, there's a lot of concrete dust and rock, and the trucks are riding over it, and then it rains a little bit, and they pound that into the ground. They've actually created an impervious surface up there, probably exceeding what their original drainage, if they even had drainage at the time. They have a very little basin, I think they put in the back to hopefully address their drainage concerns. But as you can see right here on Guthrie Highway, you can see the little bit of a pipe poking out by that driveway, and then it's kind of flat. During site plan phase, they will we'll make them reestablish that ditch section right behind where that road is there, the driveway entrance, and then reestablish the ditches out so that it's putting the water in the ditch section, which is where it belongs, as opposed to right now, it kind of pools in the back of this property and goes towards the single-family houses. It'll then pull the water appropriately away towards the road there.
But all of that is still going downhill towards the new site that is being addressed tonight. So,
Right.
I mean, everything that you are discussing is uphill from the site.
Right, the
And-
water's coming from uphill from this block company.
Right.
It's mostly going in that direction, and we're hoping to establish so that we can take some of it in this direction towards the road and down the ditch section.
Which would put it going into the new site.
Well, past the site, they're not going to build on that ditch section. I don't know if I have a better angle for you there, but,
The block company is uphill from the site
right.
that is being discussed. So the water, whether it goes toward the back or toward the front, will flow downhill onto the new site. Yes or no?
It currently does flow onto this site.
Right, but it flows from the back, and the house that is next to the proposed site, and the house next to that, and the house next to that have experienced severe water problems. The second house up from the road actually has a 3.5 to 4 foot tall chain link fence in his backyard, which disappears after any type of serious rain. I have been on that property with not that landowner, but the
Yeah.
next one, the one uphill from him, and he was wearing boots that were higher than his knees, and the water was flowing into the boots. So that's a lot of water, and I'm just trying to find out where it's going to go, because it all sounds like it's coming onto the proposed site. When it gets there, where is it going?
We'll give an opportunity through the site plan design phase with the engineers to work on a way to get the water from the behind these houses towards Guthrie Highway and then downhill from Guthrie Highway towards probably, what's down there, to Spring Creek eventually, a couple parcels down, over the railroad tracks there. That's the low area there to the right. So here's a picture. The water would come down the hill here, under the road there, through that pipe, and then that's why the swales are designed the way they are on the edge of the road, to accept that water, fill up a little bit while there's a rain, and then continue to go down the street.
There's a swamp there now, but all right.
Commissioner Beal?
Thank you. Well, Commissioner Johnson just asked my first question, so thank you for asking that. My other question is did you have any other concerns from any of the residents other than flooding?
No residents spoke against it at our meeting. The information I'm talking about was about 3 or 4 months ago when the block company came in for an expansion of one of their buildings, a 5,000 square foot expansion. That's what got the residents out there. So we build off of our knowledge from other hearings. During every rezoning, we notify everyone within 100 feet of the property, and no one came out during that, and the sign was out on the property too. So there was no opposition for or against at our meeting last week.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Woodruff?
Yes. Did I understand you saying that there are no sewage lines on this property?
Correct. The city,
So
gas and water. Yeah.
how far are we talking about all the sewage lines? Have any idea?
It's either Jim Johnson Road, which is right there, or Solar Way, but it's in the
So
general vicinity. They may
that's-
have to develop it with septic, depending what the use is.
So I
If it was
guess,
self-storage, you don't need a septic system with self-storage.
but we don't know what it's going to be
Right.
used for.
They'll have to take that into account.
So if the area is prone to flooding, are the houses next to it there, are those on septic, we're assuming?
I believe so, yeah, would have to be.
And if we put this unit, allow this to go in, and it's on septic, and I'm not sure what septic tanks, how they're designed anymore. I know in the old days, it's brick, block, and all that. So is that a possibility? Well, you may not notice that's a possibility of the tanks flooding and backing up and causing a problem with odor and smell.
I think it's
We don't
different.
know that just yet.
Yeah, this case may be a little different than if you had a, say, 100-year floodplain. That's a lot different than localized flooding. I believe they can work on their drainage, but there's also upland area that they'd be able to establish a septic system on this property. I don't want to give you the impression that the entire property floods. It's mostly just that sort of rear quarter to the left
So
there.
do we have enough land for, I guess they call field lines? We have enough for that?
I've seen parcels less than 30,000 square feet have, or 3/4 of an acre have a septic system, and this is almost 2 acres, so it's determined on the use. Would it be a restaurant? Probably not. Could it be a service station with a couple bathrooms? Maybe. Could it be something that doesn't use bathrooms? Absolutely. So that's stuff that they're going to have to determine with the county groundwater folks, and when they apply and determine how much land they need to keep open for a septic system, if that's the direction they're going to go.
So would groundwater be a part of the discussion when you are trying to, we're trying to rezone this for that purpose or use? Should it have been part of your survey?
I don't think so. We
Okay.
always address that during site plan phase, and this property, regardless of what its use is, its ability or inability to have a septic tank is not affected by the use, and they would go through the groundwater process at the site plan phase, regardless if it was a single-family home or any other use.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Knight?
Do you know if they do have a plan to input any sewer or?
No, that wasn't indicated at this time.
Okay.
Agent is here tonight.
And they do have a plan for the flooding? Yes or no?
We will work with them to address that.
Okay.
Commissioner Joe Smith?
I guess I'll just kind of help you clarify this, Jeff. I don't know. Right now, it's a residential zoning. They are not required to fill out and do a water plan when you do have a residential home. So actually approving it to go to C5 will actually help the homeowners next door, because any commercial that goes on that land will have to do a water ground survey and have a plan for the detention and retention of their water. So right now, the homes beside it flood. If you get a commercial lot to go on there, it could help it, like Jeff said, get that water off of those lots for the homeowners next door. That's all I wanted to say.
Commissioner Johnson?
First, I wanted to thank Commissioner Smith. I appreciate that. The idea behind my line of questioning, however, was that given the history of the site, that I would hope that there would be at least a bit of research or maybe a few questions asked as to the main issue with the site, which is the flooding. I understand that that is handled at a later phase of the development, but I would think that before there would be an approval of the site, that the main problem with the site would be at least touched upon. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Tyndall? Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. All right, at this time, we will now go into public hearing to hear public comments regarding CZ 7 2019 and CZ 8 2019. I would remind anyone that would like to speak on behalf or in opposition to either one of these applications, please come forward, give us your name and your address, and if you would, limit your comments to 3 minutes. At this time, we'll have anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of CZ 7 2019, the application of David B. Smith from M2 to C2. Anyone in the audience to speak on behalf? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Akshar Patel, and my address is 2700 Trenton Road, and I'm one of the members developing this property. To answer some of the questions that the commissioners had, we hope to develop this into a convenience store and gas station. Most likely going to put a 6 to 8 pump gas station and 45 to 5,000 square foot building. Don't hold me onto that, but it'll just depend on the site plan. So if anybody has any questions, I can answer.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience to speak on behalf of CZ 7 2019? Anyone else in the audience to speak on behalf? Anyone in the audience to speak in opposition to CZ 7 2019? Anyone to speak in opposition? All right, now to CZ 8 2019, application of Bill Mace from R1 to C5. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of this application?
Mayor Durrett, Commissioners, I'm Wayne Wilkinson, representing the applicant. Certainly noted Commissioner Johnson's comments, and I believe Commissioner Smith made a good comment with regard to the drainage. The drainage issue is created currently by water sheet draining from the adjoining property owner. He's developed in such a way that it's causing somewhat of an issue. We've had some preliminary discussions about this, and I say preliminary because we don't have a definite use of the property yet. And once we know what the use will be, then the civil engineers will be able to design accordingly. But certainly, regardless of how it's developed, there will be detention and there will be adequate direction of that property once it's released from detention to alleviate that problem. Nobody's going to develop that lot if there is a drainage issue there. And Commissioner Smith had a great point in that the owner of the property currently could go build a house on it, and we continue to have that problem. The planning staff and the planning commission both voted for approval, and I hope you'll support that. I don't have anything to add, but certainly am willing to try to address any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Wilkinson? Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. You are, of course, aware that there is a rather large culvert at the rear of that property, uphill, which brings huge amounts of water down from
Right.
the retention pond behind the concrete products manufacturer. So the idea of the water flowing across the surface of the ground to come downhill from the front of the concrete manufacturer kind of goes against what is currently happening on the property.
Right, and we'll have to design and provide for that, that problem.
And there is no idea what the possible use of this could be.
There's not, and if we get the zoning changed, then we will market the property, probably to some type of service or support business that would want to locate and provide services to customers in the industrial park. But honestly, don't know what that might be today.
Any other questions for Mr. Wilkinson? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience to speak on behalf of CZ8 2019? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition to CZ8 2019? Anyone to speak in opposition? That will now close our public hearing on our zoning. We'll now move to the next item on our agenda, which are our resolutions. Our first resolution is 1971, resolution authorizing submission of an application for a grant to continue the litter and trash collection program contracted with the Tennessee Department of Transportation. This is a yearly grant, no matching funds. Any questions? Resolution 1972 is a resolution asking the Tennessee Department of Transportation for improvements to State Route 374 Warfield Boulevard from south of Dunbar K Road to State Route 112, which is Madison Street. Commissioners, I may add, this is just a resolution asking for those improvements, and it's my understanding in a conversation with Mayor Pitts that the City Council will be adopting a mirrored resolution of support of this project as well. Any questions? Resolution 19, Commissioner Knight.
Are they adding sidewalks?
I would hope so, but this is really just trying to get this improvement in their pipeline. And in a conference call that Mayor Pitts and myself had with the chief engineer for TDOT, this is the first step that he recommended.
Thank you.
But we will ask for sidewalks at some point in time, I can assure you.
You know I'm going to be asked, so.
All right, any other questions on 1972? 1973 is a resolution to amend the budgets of various funds for fiscal year 2020 in certain areas of revenues and expenditures. Commissioners, this is our end of the year cleanup resolution.
It's a carry forward.
Okay, well, I'll let you talk then.
It's actually a carry forward for the capital projects that we had in fiscal year 19. We carry those appropriations over into the next fiscal year for those that haven't been spent out yet. And for clarification on 1971, there are matching funds.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's about 58,000 in matching funds on that.
That's budgeted in the current budget, though? Or
Well, it
in the
would be-
upcoming
It
budget?
would be included with this grant, yes, sir.
Okay, I apologize.
That's okay.
Any questions on 1973? All right, under our reports, the nominating committee nominations, Commissioner Gannon.
Thank you, Mayor. The nominating committee met today at 4 o'clock in the mayor's conference room. We had a discussion on the last resolution that was done on term limits that we passed in January. And the point in question was, did it become effective January 1, or was it retro, if you will? So what that means, if you were appointed to fulfill an unexpired term prior to January 1st, you're allowed to fulfill that term and then go to your first full year term, which is different under the January 1. If you're in there for 6 months, then you don't get your first full year term, if you will. So with that, the sheet that we have in there is a little bit off, because everybody's going to be able to fulfill their first-year term. So next week, on July 8th, we will enter in for, as a motion for Beer Board, that Josh Bill, who is filling an unexpired term, for Wallace Red, will be eligible for his first full-year term, which is to expire July of 2022, which is a 3-year term. Legislative Liaison, David Harper, who is filling an unexpired term for Wallace Red, is now eligible to serve his first full term, expiring July of 2021. John Gannon is nominated, who has been filling an unexpired term of Jason Hodges, is eligible to fulfill his first-year term, expiring in July 2021. And Zoning Appeals Board, Rashida Leverett, who is filling an unexpired term for Robert Gibbs, will be eligible for her first full term, expiring in July of 2024. And those will be entered in as nominations at our next meeting, as a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Gannon. Under County Mayor nominations, Animal Care and Control, Jesse Nugent, nominated to fill the unexpired term of Shanna Grice, term expiring January 2020. EMS, Commissioner Joe Smith, nominated to replace Commissioner David Harper for a 3-year term to expire July 2022. Fire Protection, Chris Barnett, nominated to replace John Todd for a 3-year term to expire July 2022. And Jonathan Hunter, nominated to replace David Graham for a 3-year term to expire July 2022. Judicial Commissioners, Darlene Sample, nominated to serve another 1-year term expiring July 2020. Rebecca Becker, nominated to serve another 1-year term expiring July 2020. And Carolyn K. Honholt, nominated to serve another 1-year term to expire July 2020. Under the Library Board, Joel Wallace is nominated to replace Riley Darnell for a 3-year term to expire July 2022. And under the County Mayor appointments, by County Solid Waste, Commissioner Larry Riccone appointed to serve a 6-year term to expire July 2025. And Building and Codes International Board of Appeals, Bruce McGahey appointed to replace Mark Daring to serve a 5-year term to expire July 2024. Out of all those that I just read, only the last one will not require commission approval. The rest of them will. Commissioners, you'll see under your reports filed that are in your packet, the library yearly report is in there, and I'm sure there'll be some additional reports that will be added prior to our formal session on July the 8th. Just a few announcements. Again, if you have suggested items for the 2020 legislative agenda, please either email them to Michelle Newell or Melissa Smith. Excuse me. Just a reminder, Mr. Tyndall's having a development roundtable with the Regional Planning Commission on July the 9th, 2019 at Civic Hall from 10 o'clock to noon. And as we talked about at our roundtable, we have a scheduled formal commission meeting for Monday, July the 15th at 6 o'clock p.m. for our budget. And then also we'll have a public hearing for our budget that will take place at 5 p.m. on the 15th. And that will be in the large 3rd floor conference room adjacent to this facility. And just ask that you keep Commissioner Pritchard in your prayers. I know your sister's health is not well, and Commissioner Pritchard, we all want to keep you in your prayers. And what? Commissioner Beal.
Thank you. I just have a quick question about the public hearing we're having on the 15th. Do folks have to sign up in advance to speak, or is that, can anybody just speak whenever?
They can just speak. We'll probably ask them to keep their comments to 3 minutes. And we're saying that's in that large conference room. We may move that over here just because we'll have a microphone and that kind of stuff. But we'll get that straight on the calendar. But no, sir, we'll just call for anybody that wants to come up. Any other questions, any other announcements? Commissioners, thank y'all. Y'all have a great evening. We're adjourned.
wish everybody a happy 4th of July. It's coming up.
Thank you.